Okay, so good evening. This class is strictly based on the now syllabus of Ministry of Foreign Affairs for PSC examination, and it will be an introductory session uh, where I will be discussing a basic concept of international relations as it is included in the syllabus. The syllabus mentions only the basic concepts, the basic knowledge or basic introduction to international relation. As you can also, if you visit the syllabus, you will be able to find it out yourself. So, we need to develop a basic understanding of international relation, and for that, we need to know what IR actually refers to. So, the international relation, it refers to the study of relationship and interaction between nations, organizations, and individuals across borders. So we need to pinpoint few key terms here. It is the study of relationship and interaction. Okay, so there is a relationship and interaction. These two fosters uh, cooperation, and sometimes it also fosters competition between states and non-state actors. And when the interaction intensifies and if there are issues of discontent between two interacting parties, then it may also result in conflict. Okay, so it is the study of relationship and interaction between nations, organizations, and individuals across borders. So there are three actors here, three categories of actors. There is a nation, uh, in a very simplified terms we can say it is a country, and there are organizations can be multilateral organizations, it can be non-governmental organizations, okay, it can be multinational corporations, private bodies, and there are individuals like you and me. So there are types of uh, interactions. It can be cooperative, conflicting, okay, and among a type of actors, the nation, organizations, and individuals, not within the borders but across the borders. So we see a simplified meaning here in this text. It says the international relation refers to the study of relationship and interaction between nations, organizations, and individuals across borders. So it explores how states and non-states, these are the two categories of actors that we mentioned here. Okay, it explores how states and non-state actors cooperate, compete, and manage global issues such as politics, security, trade, and human rights. So they interact or they build up relation or they compete or they conflict based on these issues. The relationship can be based on politics, security, trade, and human rights. So the goal of IR is to understand the IR as a study or a discipline is to understand and address global problems while fostering cooperation and reducing conflict among diverse actors. As Palmer and Perkins defined it, international relation is the study of relation among various states, groups, and international organizations that are part of the international system. So this is a more simplistic definition provided by authors. Okay. Okay, so defining international relations according to Palmer and Perkins. International relation is the relations among study of relations among various states, groups, and international organizations that are part of the international system, which means the definition highlights key actors. What are the actors highlighted in the definition? States, groups, and international organizations. Okay, that are states, countries, international organization, example UN, and others, multilateral organizations, or multinational corporations, or NGOs, or other NGOs. Okay, and other entities like multinational corporations or advocacy group, and also individuals. So this definition highlights the relations among various key actors of international relation. Then one more definition is there, which will help you to understand the field of study. International relation is the study of relationship between nations, the cause of war and peace, and the ways to secure international cooperation and the welfare of mankind. Okay, so it is there are three things here. It is the study of relationship between nations. Okay, that this definition only identifies nations as the actor. Then there are causes of war and peace. Why war happens and why peace takes place before or after the war, depending upon the situation, and the ways to secure international cooperation and the welfare of mankind, and how the international cooperation can be secured and how the welfare of mankind can be promoted or secured. Okay, this definition provides a broader perspective by emphasizing the importance of understanding the cause of war and peace. The definition uh, is more inclined towards understanding the cause of war and peace and introduces the concept of international cooperation as the key goal. So the key goal of the interaction or the relationship between nations is to understand the cause of war and peace and to secure international cooperation as per this definition of V.K. Malhotra's. Now we need to understand the origins and early development of IR as a discipline. So we can trace its roots in the ancient interactions or the ancient practice of diplomacy, war, and trade among ancient civilization. For instance, if we see uh, the in South Asian context, if we see if we can recall the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, Hanuman was sent to Lanka to negotiate with Ravan and his empire. Similarly, in Mahabharata, in the war of Kurukshetra, several protocols and several rules were followed during the war, such as after sunset there won't be any war, and before the war begins there will be a signaling that the war has already begun, and only then they can indulge in the war, and participate in the war. Similarly, in the Western world, or in the Western ancient civilization, the Treaty of Kadesh, that is between the Egyptians and Hittites in the Central Europe, in the Central European region, there was a treaty in early 1259 BCE that stands as one of the earliest peace agreement. Okay. Similarly, there are mentions of diplomatic missions in ancient China and India's Kautilya's Arthashastra that have also contributed to early IR practices. So these are the ancient foundations. While the civilizations were developing themselves, there were practices of diplomacy, war, and trade among the ancient civilizations, be it the Western civilizations or the Asian or the Eastern civilization. Similarly, um, there were religious and cultural influences of the Catholic Church and the Islamic caliphates. The Europe was into religious war in most of the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries. Okay, and that influence the relations among European states. Similarly, the Islamic caliphates in the Middle East managed international relations through treaties and trade agreements, establishing important precedents for cross-border interactions. And the Catholic Church, or the war that I mentioned in the European region, led to the Treaty of the Westphalia. Okay, this treaty ended the 30 Years' War in Europe. So the treaty came in effect in 1648. Before that, for 30 years, and before these 30 years, another 100 years, Europe was into a religious war. And the Treaty of Westphalia ended the 30-year war and established key principles like sovereignty and non-interference. These two terms are key, or the building blocks of current international system or the international relation practices. Okay. Sovereignty, in simplistic term, it is self-autonomy of one's country. Okay, the country is sovereign. Sovereign country. It means that uh, it has the people, or the government has power over the defined territory, population. Okay, and it is not under the rule of any other imperial power or any other country. And there is the principle of non-interference, which means no outside country can meddle or interfere within the domestic affairs of another country. So these two principles were established during the Treaty of Westphalia, and it is also considered as the starting point of the modern state system. This marked the beginning of the modern state system, where states became the ultimate authority within their territories. Fine. So these are the early developments. Okay. Now there are the modern development. So if we follow the timeline after the Treaty of Westphalia, the Congress of Vienna was an important gathering that established the framework for resolving disputes after the Napoleonic War. So if you know about Napoleon, he almost captured, or he almost ruled the whole world. Okay, except for that of Great Britain. Okay, and so during the 18th and 19th centuries, it was called the Age of Empires, as most of the European powers, including France, Britain, in some ways Hungary, they were on a spree to expand their empires, dominating global trade and politics. And further, the Industrial Revolution intensified the competition for resources and market, and that was the one of the major reasons for their imperialism or colonialism. Uh, okay, so in 1815, um, the leaders of the Europe, after the fall of Napoleon Bonaparte, they said that it's enough now, and we will have to stop fighting among ourselves, and they gathered in Vienna, in Austria, Okay, from 1814 to 1815, there were series of meetings, a series of congressional meetings that established the framework for resolving disputes, okay, within the Europe, and that this provided the framework for other multinational institutions uh, that that followed in the days to come. Okay, now there is World War and global institutions. The two wars, World War One and World War Two, uh, caused massive destruction and led to the establishment of first the League of Nations in 1920 and the establishment of United Nations in 1945, which means the global institutions provided a stronger mechanism for collective security and international cooperation. Okay. Then the Cold War era that also shaped the international relation, uh, how cooperations or competition or conflict were shaped dependent on the Cold War era. The bipolar system emerged after the US and USSR dominating global politics. This period was characterized by proxy wars and arms race, nuclear deterrence, and the formation of alliances like NATO and Warsaw Pact. And it also gave rise to um, movement like non-aligned movement, where there were a uh, third category of countries, or a group of countries which thought that it would be better if we are non-aligned with US and Russia, and we form a group that is known as non-aligned movement, where we will determine our own policies and we will cooperate to develop or solve our common problems through cooperation. So the non-aligned movement was the product of the Cold War between US and USSR. Then the post-Cold War to present, the Soviet Union collapse created a unipolar moment where the US emerged as a dominant power after the end of the Cold War. But globalization increased interdependence among states and new challenges emerged, including the rise of China and India and influential non-state actors such as Google, Apple, or Microsoft and other tech companies uh, who have more representation on a digital space. Okay, for instance, the combined user on Meta, which was formerly called as Facebook. And by the way, Meta comprises of different applications such as Facebook, Insta, WhatsApp, and others. The combined user base of Meta is above 1 billion. Okay, so that in itself provides huge power to private firms, okay, private companies, and there are influx of other transnational issues like terrorism, human rights issues, climate change. So, and the rise of China and India and other regional powers have created a more of a multipolar world. So these developments also shaped international relations. And there are theories uh, all along the way. There were theories that defined how state behaved. Okay, so there are two classical theories, realism and liberalism, and there is constructivism and other critical theories. So this is just a brief outline. Okay, the realism focused on power, and self-interest in an anarchic international system, which mention that states act primarily to ensure their security and survival, leading to competition. And the Cold War rivalry between the US and USSR exemplified realist dynamics. Okay, realism focus on power and self-interest, whereas liberalism, it emphasizes on cooperation and interdependence and international institutions for promoting peace. Both these theories consider that the international system is anarchic, okay, which means there is no central overarching central authority that can protect nations uh, from the act of aggression. Both these theories, realism and liberalism, they agree, but realism has an answer to solve international anarchy. It says that states should focus on power and self-interest. They should become more powerful so that they can survive in an anarchic international system. Whereas liberalism says that if states can focus on cooperation, interdependence, and international institutions, there will be less chance of war or any act of aggression among states. Okay. The European Union demonstrate how economic and political cooperation can reduce conflict between former adversaries. Now, this is a perfect example. Now, for centuries, European nation states, they fought with each other. They were at war among themselves for centuries. If we can recall the Treaty of Westphalia, the 30-year war, and before that another 100 years of war, the First World War and the Second World War, Europe was at the center of all these wars. Now, after the European Union, or after Second World War and the formation of European Union, the European continent is relatively at a peaceful stage, okay, in their existence. Exceptions are there where Russia and Ukraine are at war, but largely due to the European Union and the economic and political cooperation, conflict has reduced, okay, between the former adversaries who have converted themselves into amicable friends. Okay. Now the third theory is constructivism. It is based on idea. Okay. It examines how ideas, beliefs, and norms shapes international relations. Okay. It says, for instance, the realism and liberalism says that the international system is anarchic. Constructivism says if state believe that the international system is anarchic, they will get an anarchic international system. Okay. If they believe that the international system is cooperative, they will get an cooperative international system, okay, which is based on cooperation. So how they see the international system, they will get the same type of international system. Okay. It means the ideas, beliefs, and norms shape the international relation. The end of Cold War, influenced by the changing norms about democracy and security, illustrate constructive principles. Similarly, there are other critical theories including Marxist, feminist, and post-colonial approaches that challenges the power structures and highlight inequalities in the global system, that focuses on the marginalized perspective that is often overlooked or ignored in the traditional IR. So this is just a basic a brief introduction to the theories of international relation. The syllabus does not include any specific mention of this series. However, in other videos, we will discuss these theories in detail. Okay. My slides are not moving properly. Now, this is one question that has already been asked in previous examination for Nayab Subba. International politics and international relations. Okay. Uh, okay. While international politics is a subset of international relation. International relation has a broader perspective. Okay. Whereas the international politics has a narrow focus. We can see this. Okay, while international politics is a subset of international relation, the distinction lies in the scope and focus. Okay, the scope is broad for international relation. Okay, and the focus is on conflict and cooperation both. Whereas for international politics, it is conflict, power struggles, and diplomacy. Okay, international politics is more state-centric, emphasizing power dynamics, while IR is interdisciplinary, encompassing political, economic, social, and environmental. So this is a brief statement about the differences or the comparative uh, comparison between the international politics and international relation. On the basis of several aspects, we can see that on the basis of scope, international politics scope is narrow. It is focused on power and conflict, whereas the scope of international relation includes various aspects like politics, economic, and culture. Also environment, okay, human rights, and other things. The key actors include primarily nation state, or in simple terms, it only sees states or countries or nation state as primary actors. It does not see non-state actors as the key actors. International politics does not see non-state actors as key actors. Whereas international relation sees both state and non-state actors as key actors. The focus is on conflict, power struggles, and diplomacy among states, okay, nation states. Whereas the focus is on both conflict and cooperation. The theoretical base, international politics is best studied or understood through the theory of realism. In international relation, all the theories available to us can be utilized to understand international relation, as it is a broader discipline. Now there are examples. The US-China trade war, NATO formation, that is more focused on power and conflict or power struggle. Whereas in international relation, along with this power and conflict, it also includes climate change negotiation, UN peacekeeping, human rights, and so on. Okay. So basically, international politics is the subset of international relation. Now let's discuss the nature of international relation. The nature is it is multidisciplinary. It means it borrows from various other disciplines, including politics, economics, sociology, history, law, and geography, to study global interactions. Okay, and it is dynamic and evolving. IR constantly changes with global trends, power shifts, tech advancements, and emerging challenges like climate change and cybersecurity. It is evolving every day. The transition, it is often said that I don't know who said it, but I heard it somewhere that in politics, 1 week is a very long time. Okay, the adage is something similar to this, which means that within short span of time there is sea changes in politics and international politics. I think the time frame would reduce. The transition from the bipolar Cold War today to the today's multipolar system exemplifies this evolution. Now, the nature has changed because it sees actors that is beyond the state, which means it also recognizes non-state actors. Okay. Now, while the traditional focus was on nation state, the modern IA recognizes the crucial role of UN, WTO, international organizations, MNCs, and NGOs in shaping global outcomes. And it examines both conflict and cooperation. Uh, it examines both conflict, war and rivalries, and cooperation treaties and alliances. And the Russia-Ukraine war represents conflict, while Paris Climate Agreement exemplifies international cooperation. So the nature is it is multidisciplinary, dynamic and evolving. It also thinks beyond the state, which means there is a space for non-state actors, and it balances conflict and cooperation. So what has changed in international relation? How the landscape has changed? There is globalization. Uh, the economies are integrated. There is cultural exchange and interdependence among nations on various fronts, including in technology, including on human right issues, including on economic relations, trade relations. Okay, it has transformed how nations interact, though there are challenges like inequality and protectionist backlash that have emerged. Okay, and there are technological revolutions, digital diplomacy, cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, social media have fundamentally altered how international relation functions and how global movements gain traction. A perfect example would be Twitter, which is now called as X, or Twitter diplomacy or X diplomacy, where world leaders are more inclined to promote their policies or to disseminate information using social media. The third is there is a multipolar world. So after the Cold War, there was a brief unipolar moment where US was the single superpower. But after the US decline of US unipolarity and the rise of China, India, and regional power, the international system has seen more complex power distribution globally, which means the world is increasingly moving towards a multipolar world, which means there is no single superpower and there are multiple major powers in different regions. So that will shape international relation in the days to come. And there are transnational challenges, or in the words of Kofi Annan, these are the problems without passports, which means that they transcends the national boundary, such as climate change. It is a common problem. It cannot be limited to a single country. There are pandemics which recently we could encounter, and we saw the devastating effect on socio-economic conditions due to the COVID pandemic. There are issues related to migration and terrorism. And all these issues, transnational issues, require collective action beyond traditional state-centric approach, which means we need collective actions, and we have to also include non-state actors for their uh, participation or partnership. And non-state influence has increased in modern international relation, which means NGOs, multilateral corporations, advocacy groups increasingly shape global politics alongside the traditional state actors. These interconnected changes have transformed IR from a primarily state-focused discipline to one that must account for complex network of actors and borderless challenges requiring unprecedented cooperation. Fine. So we discussed the changing landscape of international relation, the nature of international relation, difference between international politics and international relation, a brief introduction to the major theories of international relation, which also plays the part in the development of IR as a discipline. Then we discussed modern development of international relation based on the timeline and the early or the origins of international relation in ancient history. Discussed two definitions of international relations, and this is the first slide. So I hope you enjoyed or you learned something from this video. If you liked it, encourage me to make more such videos. So see you soon. Thank you.